Let's talk a little bit about what's happening from an economic standpoint in sports. I mean, over the past couple of weeks, we have cheerleaders for the L.A. Raiders or Oakland. So are they L.A. Raiders now? Are they still?
Yeah. Oh, they're Oakland. They're
Oakland
Oakland.
Raiders. The Oakland Raiders come out and basically start to sue for wage theft. I couldn't believe that the terms of their contract is unbelievable. They work 10 hours on, I guess, once a week on the teams. They don't get paid for practices. They get $125 like for a 10-hour day. They don't get paid for any of the charitable appearances. It's unbelievable.
And they can get fired, and treated like Hester Prynne if there's so much as seen talking to one of the players.
It's just stunning. And then let's also talk about what's going on in terms of unionizing college athletes, because this is fascinating. I mean, they are so unbelievably exploited. It's just tell us what's happening on that front.
Sure. You had just said history made at Northwestern University, where the team, led by their quarterback, Kane Coulter, submitted to the National Labor Relations Board almost 100% of the team signing on union cards. And they are and they're waiting for the NLRB ruling, and they want to be recognized as a union. Now, there are a ton of pitfalls going forward, but I really do view this as the first crack in the NCAA's cartel. This is really that first ripple in the water, and it's going to be fascinating to see where this goes from here, spreads, even how it doesn't spread and why it doesn't spread, because the sentiment that they're putting forward, which isn't even about money, even though they generate so many billions of dollars, college football players, it's about saying we want to make sure our health care is covered. We want to make sure our education is covered if we get hurt on the field. We want to make sure that there's some basic fairness in this relationship. And that, believe me, scares the holy hell out of the NCAA. And the people at Northwestern, it scares them, the powers that be there, for a very different reason. Because if Northwestern recognizes this union, and Northwestern can recognize the union independent of the NCAA, not only do they risk getting kicked out of the NCAA, but also they run the risk of the graduate students and the work-study students and everybody on campus saying, where's my union?
Right. And so now, from the perspective of the National Labor Relations Board, can they find in favor of these guys because they're not getting paid? I mean,
of course they can, because the reason why they can is that currently they really are getting paid. It's just not discussed. Like, gets very under-discussed, but say you're a college football player and you don't want to live in a dorm, you want to live off campus. Then you can apply to get your housing money in cash and live off campus. Say you don't want to eat your meals in the school cafeteria. You can get money to get your meals off of campus. So you can do all of these things that connote payment. And that's going to be their main argument, that there's money being exchanged all the time. It's just that there is a legal fiction called student athletics, which, by the way, was created by the NCAA in the 1950s, so they wouldn't have to pay the widow of a man named Ray Bannister who died on the field. They didn't want to have to pay her workers' comp, so they made up this legal fiction called student athletics and student athletes. That's where the word comes from. And so that's why it's hilarious when you look at the NCAA's response to this union effort. You got to look at the response. It's literally a 4-sentence response that uses the phrase student athlete 5 times. Like, it reminds you of the Joe Biden thing about Giuliani, where it's just a noun, a verb, and 9/11. It's just every sentence is a noun, a verb, and student athlete, because student athlete is kind of like their great legal bulwark against them being recognized as workers.
Now, what does it say that this that this came out of Northwestern as opposed to any other school?
It says that you had students there who were going to class. I mean, there are a couple of schools. They tend to be very elite colleges, like Northwestern, like Stanford, like Notre Dame, where there are very few of these schools that expect to put on big-time football and expect the athletes to actually go to class. And there are not a lot of schools that operate in that way. And one of the genesis of this idea in and of itself was the fact that Kane Coulter and several of his teammates were taking a labor law class at Northwestern. And they were hearing all the theories about labor law, and they said, wait a minute, why doesn't this apply to our situation? And that's the other part of this, which makes me so I want to laugh or cry or at the NCAA, is that they talk, they blather, they bleat, they harangue us about student athletes. And here's the real thing.
Right.
Here are athletes who are going to class, they're thinking critically. How do I apply my knowledge I learn in this ivory tower to the real world? And they're getting slammed for it. I mean, that to me just exposes so clearly the NCAA is really just a system of indentured servitude.
What's going on the campus? I mean, are students rallying around these guys or what?
Well, the football season just ended, of course. My understanding is that everybody's buried in snow. But beyond the snow by which people are, I mean, my sister lives in Evanston, so I speak with some seriousness there. But the idea is that, yeah, of course it has support on campus. People are proud of the fact that their football team really was the first. The same way people at Missouri are proud of the fact that Michael Sam was the first. I mean, because I think when you're part of an environment that produces a trailblazer, you get that feeling of pride because you really do feel like, hey, I helped create the circumstances that made people feel like they could take this historic step.
Well, it's fascinating stuff. I hope people are following you on Twitter and checking out edgeofsports.com because I can't remember a time where we have had more sort of the politics of sports. Yeah. I mean, it's really been fascinating stuff. Dave, thank you so much for your time today.
No, my privilege. Thanks so much, Sam.